Hey, hello, Challenger. I'm happy to be here. Say hi, please. If you are in the chat, just say where you're from, what technologies you are working with, because then I can hopefully help you specifically with what you need. So, welcome to the Warmup Series. And just to be clear, this is not the main event. The main event will happen next Tuesday at 10 p.m. So it's basically the same time as today. And this event will happen today, Friday, and Monday. And it's going to happen the same time. It's going to be at 10 p.m. Dublin time. And today, I will talk about how to be a developer in high demand for companies and be well paid as a developer. And so, if you can tell me briefly about your career and about your biggest challenges, that will be great. I will read the chat later. If you can leave me a question regarding what exactly you want for your career. So, okay, so how can we become a developer in high demand in the market? So, we need to master the right skills that are in high demand, right? So those core skills are obviously your programming language. So I will guess that most of you here are Java developers. So if you're a Java developer, master most of the Java features, only the most important ones because you don't really need to know everything. And you need to remember the Pareto principle, which is if you know the 20% of the most important features from programming language, you're going to be able to solve 80% of the problems. So, which is a lot. And please tell me in the chat if you can hear me perfectly, because then I will know that all works fine. So, okay, so if you want to work with Java, obviously you need to know the basics, right? You need to know how to handle exceptions. You need to know about object-oriented programming, like polymorphism, inheritance. You need to know about encapsulation. You need to know the basics. You need to know how to create a good code so that you don't reinvent the wheel, because I see many developers, unfortunately, reinventing the wheel or creating horrible code, like creating methods with more than 1,000 lines, which is really not good. You need to know how to break it down so that you make your code organized and easy to read, because we don't write code for the machine, we write code for the developers. Remember that. To be a good developer, you need to create readable code. You need to learn from other developers. So when you see the code in the pull request, analyze what's going on there, try to understand the concepts. Don't just use a concept without understanding what's going on behind the scenes. When you're using that concept, you need to know what's going on. You need to understand why you use, for example, polymorphism. Why would you use polymorphism? To reduce coupling, right? You don't want your class having the instance right away. You can use polymorphism, and then you can have less dependencies between classes. And you also need to know about fundamentals, because probably most of you know that nowadays companies are requiring you to know about algorithms and data structures. And if you don't know that, it's very unlikely that you're going to pass on those interviews. So you need to practice algorithms. You need to know the most important ones, like right first search, left first search, or merge sort, quick sort. You need to know how to create those algorithms. You need to know how to create a hash map by yourself or an array list. And you need to know what are the differences between data structures like queue, stack, uh, a linked list, or an array list. You need to know why you use each one of those data structures. And then you need to specialize, because the companies want someone who is really good at a specific thing, and it could be AWS, for example. I know that the companies pay a lot for developers who know AWS very well. So it could be something you can choose, or it could be even the front end. If you like the front end, I particularly don't like to focus only on the front end. I like the most the back end, but I'm okay to do work with the front end as well. And just one important detail here, because even if you choose to specialize, you need to have a general knowledge about the important technologies, because even more nowadays, right? Because by working with microservices, we have so many technologies that it's very difficult to know only one specific technologies. It's impossible. You need to have a general knowledge so that you become a good problem solver. And you have to be a good learner as well, because it's not actually, it's very common that in my day-to-day job, I always have a task that I never seen, like something that I never worked before. So I have to understand what's going on behind the scenes. I have sometimes to use a technology I've never used before. So there are situations like that nowadays, and this is very common because with microservices, the set of technologies are so wide that we need to be good on learning new things. And like I said, one skill that the companies are valuing a lot is to be a good problem solver, because like I said, nowadays there isn't such a thing like mastering a framework and mastering just a couple of technologies and then you are good. No, you need to do a lot more than that. You need to be able to learn faster, and to be able to learn faster, you need to master fundamentals. That's the only way. And nowadays, like I said, we have code challenges, we have algorithms challenges during the interviews, and it's important for us to practice regularly on lead code and HackerRank. So we don't need to solve the difficult ones. It's rare that the companies will ask us to solve a difficult code challenge, but we need to practice often enough the easy and the medium algorithms. And if you are able to solve those algorithms within a certain time limit, you should be, it should be good to pass on those interviews. But obviously you need to try, because doing the algorithm on your own is one thing. Doing the algorithm with someone looking at you, it's another whole thing. You're gonna feel pressured, and it's another experience. So you need to do the interviews that you get used to the experience. And the other good thing to keep on the top of the market is to get certifications. So if you can tell me if you're a Java developer or what technology you're using, just tell me, just send a message. Otherwise, I'm gonna tell you. So if you work with Java microservices, I will tell you to focus on AWS, because if you notice, the market focus a lot on Java, AWS, and Spring. So those are the technologies that are used at the most in the whole world. And if you have a good understanding of those technologies, you're going to be more prepared to get a job and to solve real world problems. And well, when we are talking about microservices, we have to talk also about containerization. So we need to talk about Docker and Kubernetes. So, and those are good so that you can deploy your application anywhere. So you can deploy your application in AWS or in your local machine, doesn't matter where, because the container will containerize your application, and doesn't matter really where you run your application. So you need to learn not everything, right? You don't need to be a full specialist on Docker and Kubernetes, but you need to know the basics at least. You need to know why you would use Docker or Kubernetes, for example. And you need to know that at least the 20% from those technologies that will solve the 80% of the problems. So keep that in mind. You don't need to know everything about all technologies, because otherwise you would spend 5-10 years just to master a technology and that's not worth it. And like I said, if you're working with Java, you need to know about Spring Boot and Spring Cloud, because with this technology, you can create robust microservices. And if you're working with Node.js, you could use Express. And so nowadays with microservices, we also are working in the culture of CI/CD, which is continuous integration, continuous delivery. And we need to know about that. We need to know the basics of Git, the basics of integrating code, building and testing code, and also deploying and delivering this application so that the customers will be able to access your application. And when we are working with microservices, we also use monitoring and logging. So we need to know how to use those technologies. A very popular one is Prometheus. I used in my career Datadog, and yeah, Datadog was the one I used at the most, but Prometheus is also very good, and you can try it out. Message brokers, we have Apache Kafka and RabbitMQ. So if you don't know about those message brokers, I highly recommend you to create a personal project and create 2 microservices, deploy it on AWS, make those microservices communicate through this message broker so that you get familiarized with those technologies. I think it's very important so that you get so you know how to use those technologies. Databases, you need to know a relational database like Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, or you need to know also NoSQL, like MongoDB or Cassandra or GraphQL. So those technologies are good for you to know at least the basics. Like I said, don't try to learn 100% because it's going to be impossible. And try to create something that would solve a problem from your day-to-day life. So, for example, if you have an idea to create an app for productivity, why not? Because it's going to be a good learning for you. It's going to be a good way for you to show your portfolio. So if you have an idea to create an app, an application, do it, because even if your product is not successful, it's going to be a great way for you to learn and to apply this knowledge with those technologies. And one other great thing is to build a portfolio, right? So to build a strong portfolio how can you do that? You can do that by creating a project on GitHub, or you can deploy this application on AWS and make it available to others. And you could put this link from your application on your CV, for example. And one thing that's very important as well is to put your GitHub account on your CV, because then the companies will know that you are focused on your skill set advancement, and you're gonna show that you want to grow in your career. You're gonna show that you are a strong candidate. Because think about it, who would the company choose between a developer who has nothing in their GitHub and another developer who has a robust project with good code, with testing, containerized, a robust project? Who do you think the company would choose? Obviously, it's the developer who has this project, because then I can easily see what was developed. Obviously, you need to know how to explain that. You can't just copy code from AI, for example, and then build your application, then say that it's your portfolio. You need to understand what are the concepts behind the scenes, because probably the interviewer would ask you about your project. And uh, if you developed your project um, knowing all the concepts behind the scenes, it's going to be the easiest interview ever. So keep that in mind. And if you can even go beyond that. You can contribute to open source projects. So think about an open source project you really like and start small. Start fixing documentation, start creating unit tests, do a small refactoring. So why I'm saying that? I'm saying that because if you create a pull request for a huge feature, it won't be accepted, right? Because people don't know you yet, people don't trust you yet. So you need to start small. You start small, you fix documentation, you fix some unit tests, you do a small refactoring, and then with time, people will notice you and they will trust you. And then it's going to be much easier to create a bigger per request, right? So keep that in mind. Don't be arrogant when you are contributing to open source. Start small. Let people know you. Let people understand about your skill set, and then it's going to be easier for you to make bigger contributions. And to be a developer in high demand to the market, you need to understand the business and domain, because to create good quality code, it's not enough to know only technical skills. You need to understand about the business. And how can you do that? You can do that by talking with product. So you can understand what's going on with product. You can talk with the stakeholders that have a deeper knowledge about the business. You can run queries to understand the main business tables. You can do so many things to understand better the business, and also make friends with someone who knows a lot about the business and try to discuss ideas and try to create your own diagram about the business. So if you have the microservices there, try to map what each one of those microservices do exactly, because then it's going to help you to understand what's going on and what exactly is happening in the system. And like I said, nowadays there are so many technologies that we need to know, we need to be adaptable. Because for me, for example, it was very difficult to change from monolith to microservices. There was so many things I needed to learn. And to be able to learn those technologies, we need to have good adaptability. So we need to be adaptable to be able to learn those concepts. And we need to learn how to learn. And like I said, the way to accelerate your learning is by mastering fundamentals. Because when you master fundamentals, then you are simply using a tool. So think about it. If you're using Java, what you're using behind the scenes? You are strongly using object-oriented programming. When you're using Java or any other programming language that are object-oriented that use the paradigm of object-oriented programming, you're going to be using this paradigm in those programming languages, which means that it's going to be much easier for you to use those technologies because they are just using a concept. They are using algorithms, they are using data structures, they are using functional programming. Some of them are using reactive programming. Many of those programming languages are also using design patterns. So if you learn those principles and concepts, it's going to be much easier to learn all of those programming languages, because then it's just a matter of learning and also memorizing the syntax, right? So That's why if you learn fundamentals, you are able to learn any technology faster. And you also need soft skills. Like I said yesterday, you need to work on your communication skills. You need to have work on your networking. So you need to make a contact with key people, and you need to have a good relationship with your coworkers, because in the end, it's going to be them who will help you to grow in your career, to get a promotion, for example, because your manager is the first thing that your manager will do. Your manager will start asking your coworkers about the quality of your work. So if you want to get promoted, you need to show your work so that you convince your team that you're doing a good job. So you need to do that consistently so that you create this trust, and people uh, will advocate for your growth in the company. And to be a developer in high demand, like I said before, you need to be practicing coding challenges very often, because those are difficult. It won't be overnight that you're going to master all of those algorithms. Algorithms is a skill separately from your day-to-day job. So when you're solving an algorithm, you're going to use different coding techniques than you would use on a day-to-day job, because on a day-to-day job, we're going to do easy things, right? Well, I wouldn't say easy, because like I said, it's nowadays things are complicated. But what I mean is that if you are going to create code, usually most times you're going to be creating configurations, or you're going to be doing some CRUD operation, which is considerably easier than creating an algorithm. So that's why you need to practice algorithms outside of your day-to-day job. Otherwise, you're gonna get you won't be able to pass in the interview. So you need to keep that in mind. So practice on LeetCode and HackerRank, because then you're gonna be more prepared for the interviews, and practice system design as well. So if you have a buddy, if you have a developer friend who you can practice those interviews, it's gonna help you. So talk to a developer friend and simulate a system design interview, and that will help you to get used to it, because if you're doing this interview for the first time, it's very difficult. If you've never done before, if you don't have idea of how it works, it's going to be very hard. So try looking into some videos on YouTube about those interviews so that you know how it works. And nowadays, remote work is common, right? And it definitely helps you to work remotely. And you need to use the tools, right? You need to use the tools well. So Jira, for example, is a good tool for Kanban board and Scrum. And you need to communicate with other developers. You need to be available. If a developer wants to talk with you, be available and be reachable, so that if people need you, they can simply talk with you. And remember that if you get a remote job, you might work with people from all over the world. And you have to keep in mind that you need to have a cultural sensitivity, right? You can't tell things to other people. So you need to, notice the context. Like you wouldn't, like you have to respect other people's culture, because they will be different. For example, there'll be people who are Christian, other people are Muslim, other people have other religions. They have different cultures for marriage, or the way they talk, or There are people uh, who, Muslims would pray 5 times a day. So it's different. Each culture is different, and we need to respect the boundaries, and we need to, basically be respectful, right? So we have to have this cultural sensitivity, uh, so that everyone can work together, and so that you can work in a nice environment with no stress. So that's highly important. And please, if you can tell me if you can hear me correctly, that would be great. If you can just write on the chat on Instagram or on YouTube. So I see one question here. Um, which sites do you suggest to practice code challenges? So Fabricio is asking that. So I would say, Fabricio, Lead Code or HackerRank are very good. So, well, we probably heard that already. Okay, so let's continue. And you also need to know what technologies would make you save money, right? Because when you're working in the cloud with AWS, for example, it's important to know what technologies will save money, right? And you need to learn about modern tools and practices, because when you're working with microservices, you're going to have to create a document with pros and cons. You need to convince your whole team of what you should do. So keep that in mind, and you need to diversify skills as well, because like I said, even though if you have a focus, you're going to have to have general skills as well. So you need to know, so to be able to solve complex problems, you need to have a broad set of skills. And other than that, you need also to have good communication skills, because otherwise, how can you show your work if you can't communicate clearly what you're doing? So you need to also listen, because when you're communicating with someone, you can't only speak and speak and speak. We might think that the good speaker, the good people who are people who are good in communication are the people who talks at the most, but that's not the truth. So if you are talking too much and if you're not listening, you're not a good communicator. So you need to talk and listen. You need to use active listening, and this is pretty difficult. We underestimate that, but it's pretty difficult to listen to someone, because we are kind of programmed to talk over someone when we disagree with this person. So we need to be careful with that and try to listen without judgment until the end. And another thing to improve communication is to expand your vocabulary. How can you do that? By listening to audiobooks or by reading books. That will definitely help you with your vocabulary and improve your body language. Like if you're talking to someone, look them at the eye, mind your posture, because the way you look with your posture, you can pass the sign, the signal that you you are not confident, for example. So with a good posture, you pass the image of someone who is confident. The tone of voice as well is also very important. And also use gestures. So I'm using some gestures here. Obviously, you don't need to go crazy on your gestures. Just, be subtle. And because that will help you to get a promotion or get another job in an interview. Because I talked with several managers and they told me that your communication skills are roughly 50% of the interview. It's a lot, right? So basically 50% communication and the other 50% is your technical skills. And I would even encourage you to practice public speaking. And you can start small. You can, for example, go to a meetup or a Java user group close to your place. Then you could offer a lightning talk of 5 minutes so that you can build up your confidence and then you can grow bit by bit. And for writing skills, I recommend you using Grammarly. I've been using Grammarly for more than 5 years and it's been amazing. So I learned so much, so many words in English, and it helped me to expand my vocabulary definitely. And to listen, so I've been listening to many audiobooks on Audible, and I highly recommend you to use this tool because there's so much wisdom on books. So I recommend you to use Audible. And for example, I listen to books when I am, for example, washing the dishes or when I go to the gym. So every time I do kind of a brainless activity, I would listen to a book or a podcast. Also, when I'm commuting to work, so I also listen to audiobooks or podcasts, which is great because it's a great way to optimize your time. And that's pretty much it, challengers. So if you don't have any questions, that's pretty much it. And don't forget that on next Tuesday, we're going to have the main event, the High Value Developer webinar. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you there. This is just a warm-up series, just a warm-up video. But I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the main event because there I'm going to be able to go a bit deeper into those topics. And we only have here just a couple of minutes, so it's impossible for me to go deep into those topics, but I go a lot deeper into all of those topics to help you become a well-paid developer and also stand out in the market in the Challenger Developer course. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in the main event, and that's pretty much it, Challenger. Have a good evening, and I'll see you soon.